People will do what they want to do, and so should you. Hold your own and do the things you want to do. And that's really where I encourage women to come from. Do what you need to do. Like you said, we have now. Let's not live a life of regret. Do the thing you want to do and just go for it.
Hello there and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. My name's Rick Nuske. I am your host and I am so proud to be your host of this show because I have so much fun. It's really a privilege for me to be that person for you, serving you, bringing you great people. And on today's show, I have the pleasure of welcoming author, RN, health coach, personal trainer, and podcaster, Lee Forrester. Welcome to the show, Lee.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me here today, Nick.
It's absolutely a pleasure to have you here, Lee. Now, today we're going to be talking about your new book called Kippers and Kapes, in which we take a deep dive into the plight of young nurses, past and present. And we're going to be discussing the differences in US and UK culture, professional practice, and how these differences can impact nursing styles, as well as your website and all the work you're doing at becoachedbylee.com. So before we do any of that, Lee, it's customary for us to spend a few moments learning a little bit about you. So tell us where you're calling in from.
So I'm on the west coast of the US. I'm in California, although that's not my starting place, but that's where I am right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. When you say not your starting place, what do you mean by that? You've only moved there recently, or?
I know I've been here for a good while. I'm from the UK originally, so I'm a UK transplant, as are many, yes, and found my way to the West Coast, which seemed like a good place to settle.
And that's a big part of today's conversations regarding your book, isn't it? Because there's differences in cultures for RNs between the two countries. And, we'll be taking a deep dive into that. But in your location now, how long have you been there?
I've been here 20 plus years.
Time flies, doesn't it?
I know. And you're having fun.
Yeah. So what do you like doing there? What's your hobbies? Do you have any pastimes that you enjoy?
I like being outside as much as possible. I like the outdoors. I like, we have, for the most part, apart from recent times, really fantastic weather. And we're very fortunate. There's lots of places to hike and just to be outside and just, there's lots of things to see. We're very fortunate. There's a lot of things to see and do here. And there's something pretty much for everybody, I feel.
Yeah, there's going to be a bit of a contrasting experience for me because I don't know too much about the UK. Tell us a little bit about the differences in weather because from what I understand, they're chalk and cheese.
You're right. So, like right here, apart from just recently when we've had unusually bizarre weather, you can plan to be doing things outside. They don't normally say depending on the weather. Whereas in the UK,
Yeah.
it's always going to depend on the weather. And it's very hard to plan something for outdoors, even in the summer. And summers can be beautiful, but one never knows.
You just
Be
never know.
prepared for everything.
If you want to play the lotto, you play it there, that's for sure and certain. Now,
Exactly.
I love a movie. Do you enjoy movies?
I love movies. I haven't watched too many recently, but I have some favorites. Yes.
I tell you, I've found that I guess in the recent times where we were locked down at home, that I fell in love with Amazon Prime. Do you watch it at home when you do watch a movie, or do you enjoy
I
actually going to
do.
the cinema?
I'll watch it home.
Fantastic. Now, music. I love music. Do you love music?
All sorts of music.
Fantastic. Now, I can only assume that you have music in the background when you're doing all of your, I guess, your fitness side of your life, which you're going to take a deep look at in a moment. But let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to the UK where you grew up. Where exactly was it that you grew up? And tell us a little bit about what life was like as a child.
Yeah, I call it the small town where nobody goes unless they really had to. It was neither you'd be passing. Actually, it's a pretty nice town. People, very salt of the earth kind of people, very down to earth, a very homely kind of town,
Yeah.
kind of small town feel. I walked to the local school. So you lived and went to school pretty much with kids in your neighborhood, so to speak. And it was, life was good and life was pretty simple, it seemed. And, there's a corner shop pretty much everywhere. So you can get your as much candy and sweets and chocolate as you could stomach on the way to school and on the way back home again.
So did you have the same sort of lifestyle that many of us had growing up where, the time to be home was the streetlights coming on?
Well, mine was more restricted than that. I had very, very strict parents, so it
Ah.
didn't matter what the lights were doing. I needed to make sure I find myself in the house.
In those formative years, we all go through this, and this is great for context for because people, we know that behind businesses there are people running those businesses, and understanding your story is a big part. So I really appreciate you sharing your story with us. Now, in those formative years, those earlier years, I guess most of us at least have somebody in their life that they look to and had guidance from, and really helped them to develop in the person they are today. Did you have anybody like that?
I would have to say definitely my dad was very inspiring to me, and my school teachers, and I've
Ah,
found this to be very much the case with other people I've listened to, athletes and what have you. Teachers don't seem to get forgotten. You can remember their name and what they taught you, and many characteristics about them. So I would say teachers and people in the community long before this whole what was it? What was the phrase they used for this image? This person that guided you. It
mm.
wasn't from TV. It was people you knew in the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, absolutely. Great feedback. Thank you very much. Now, I don't like getting up too early in the morning. Are you an early riser? Tell us a little bit about your day. What's it look like?
Well, I don't know if I'm an early riser, but I do get up early. So I do get up, I get up early and I run, I'm on a social media platform where I'm speaking early, and I do that because of the time difference. A lot of it is before my day gets started. I
Yeah.
can do that and be talking to people on the East Coast in which is business hours for them. And also it's just a way to get things done. If you feel like you don't have enough time, you just got to get up earlier. That's just all there is to it. We can't make time. So if you get up early, you kind of buy time, which is a beautiful thing because you can get stuff struck off your list and it might only just be breaking day. So
Yeah,
I
wow.
like that about it.
That's some sage advice there. A lot of people go, "Oh, I might do it later. I'll get up, or I'll wait till tomorrow." And tomorrow never really comes, does it?
No,
You go,
you gotta bite it and just do the thing and get up, and it feels so you feel so accomplished when you get things done. And I
hmm.
wouldn't naturally get up early, but there's just something to be said for getting stuff done.
Just get it going. There's plenty of time to sleep later on. Now, how important is it for you to have some downtime, some relaxation time? Do you find any free time for that?
I do. I do carve out that time for self-care, which is very important. I'm very driven and I like to get things done. And I need to remind myself as I coach others to take care of yourself. I do prioritize my self-care every single day, but I also, I have to say I'm pretty driven and I just want to feel like I'm getting stuff done and accomplishing things.
Yep.
But I will exit left a little bit at the weekends and just like, you know what? It's okay to take some time off. It really is. Go outside, get a walk, go for a nice meal, what have you, go to a show and have a laugh, whatever the situation is. It's all balance. It's super important. So I'm all about that.
Thank you again. Now, this is a bit of a two-sided conversation today. On one side, we're going to be talking about the book, and then the other side,
Mhm.
your background in the fitness space and the people that you work with. So, in terms of your early morning routine, do you have a fitness regime? What do you do?
So my regime in the morning is more about mindfulness more than my physical activity. I do
Right.
train people in the morning. Tomorrow morning, I'll train a lady here. In my time, I'll train her at 6 a.m. because in her time zone, it's 9 a.m.
Aha.
So I do that before my work day. And I actually love that. It's so exciting because then I go off to my next venture and I'm already super energized, maybe too much for the people I'm around, but like, woo, I'm ready to go.
Pumped
Um,
up.
right? I am revved up and fired up. And I tell people like, and I said, and this is pre-coffee. Actually, coffee needs me.
Oh,
And
goodness.
so, but part of my morning routine is also, I've practiced in probably within the last year is to get up and have some quiet time, some mindfulness time, a little bit of meditation, to be focused and intentional about how I want my day to go, how I want my life to go. So that's really been a relatively new-ish practice, but it's incredible because what you think about, as I say, does come about. So that's something I've been doing in recent months.
Now, I have a question for you in terms of
Yeah.
hydration. Hydration.
Yes.
You see these drinks that these energy drinks and these bottles of water with whatever is in it? What do you think, water or those energy drinks for workouts?
I would say water. If I'm going to have something in my water, I'll put my own electrolytes in there so
Ah,
I can vouch for that. I know what it is.
yep,
You do read the ingredients and see what you're getting.
yep.
Electrolyte water is pretty good, or having the correct pH water is good, and
Mm.
definitely water before coffee.
Ah, there you go. I might need to change my morning routine to meet that one, I think. Now, what have you learnt from taking your chance? I know that you've written a book
Yeah.
and we're going to talk about that in a moment, but it just occurred to me to ask this question. What have you learnt from taking a chance? You know, you were a registered nurse and
Yeah.
you spent many, many years in that field, but you at some stage decided, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on myself. And how did that
Yeah.
feel?
You know, you have to be in tune with yourself. And
Mm,
there was times towards the end of my nursing years where I knew there was something else I wanted and I couldn't quite figure out what it was, but I knew there was something else. There was always something more that I wanted. And I would stand there in the middle of a unit sometimes in a patient's room and I was like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Okay, what are you doing here? So I had to do some uh, inside work and decide, and then I also went through a very, I would say, a traumatic life experience, which really jolted things
mm.
and had me really take stock of my life and look back and say, if your life was changing or to be kind of grim for a minute, if you knew that this was it towards the end of your life, what would you want to have done differently? What would you be happy about and what would you have a regret about? And if that's something you can change, then you should do that thing. And having gone through a major event in life makes you think and realize, well, you know what? If I can deal with this, then I can deal with other things that I've actually chosen. So sometimes you roll the dice. I've rolled the dice on some things that didn't turn out quite as I planned, but I've learned a lot about myself. You get yourself up, dust yourself off,
Yep.
and move forward and do something else and just keep failing until you find where you need to be. And yes, that's a little risky, granted,
Hmm.
but but I don't have any regrets about it.
What do they say? Nothing ventured, nothing gained?
Right.
Now, tell me, I know that as a registered nurse that you would have confronted a death many times.
Mm,
Does it become something that I guess is so almost omnipresent around someone who does your line of work, or at least did? And do you become normalized to it, or does it remind you each and every day, hey, look, we
right,
are on a limited time frame here?
right. It, I never got used to it in that it was familiar, but always appeared, it was always weird.
Yeah, I
It was
bet.
always, it always was weird. It was never just, oh, another person died. And oftentimes if they were in there for any period of time, you got attached to that person
Mm,
and you felt that loss for the family. You grieved, you still grieved. There were occasions where there was one nurse I remember particularly, and she was just sobbing. And I was like, what happened? Somebody she'd grown attached to that was a patient had died. We'd seen it many times, but we still, because of the nature of who we are and the job that we do, we still care.
of
We still
course.
feel.
Mm.
And it's still sad. It's still, yeah, we sorry to see people go. And there are people that have gone on, people that I was with them in their last moments, and I'll never forget them.
Never forget them. Now I can, you know, that I often hear feedback that you need to be a certain type of character, a certain
Mhm.
type of person for you to be able to be in the emergency services and in healthcare and in your line of work. Would that be fair?
I would say so, and it does draw those empaths. It does tend to be those types of people, and people are you're dealing with human beings. It's not a package. It's not a box. Everybody's unique,
Mm-hmm.
and we connect with people. And I still have great stories in my mind of some of those interactions with those individuals. And as bringing a baby into the world, when people are leaving, there's I know it sounds bizarre, but it's kind of an art to it.
Yep.
And there's something to be said for allowing people to go with dignity, with as little pain as possible, and just making it the best you can for them and their family members who are often in attendance.
I know you've shared so much about this experience for yourself thus far, but I'm wondering if there was one thing that you had to pick out of
Mm,
all of it during those years as a nurse. What's one
mhm.
thing that your experience in that field taught you about yourself? Do you think?
Yeah, you know what? Just that we can connect. I've learned I can connect with lots of different people, no matter age, stage, walk of life, background. We can become kind of like a chameleon and adapt to who we're with.
Hmm.
And that I think even though I left that field, I still love the human connection. I loved finding out about people. So, who are you when you're not here with such and such a illness? Who are you? I loved finding out about people,
Yeah.
especially older people. What did you used to do? Who were you? What did you do? What did you do before you retired? And I just was curious, kind of loved asking questions and allowing them to see that I saw them as a whole person, not just a disease.
You know what? You've touched on something that's really near and dear to my heart is that you look into the wisdom of the eyes of an old person
Hmm.
and you cannot buy the experience. There is so much, I guess they are the sum total of their entire life experience and they're sitting right in front of you. Were you
Hmm.
ever in awe of people like that?
You know, I really love older people.
Mm.
There's something about them. Where I live, there's a little bit of, I think there's a little bit of ageism that goes on,
Hmm.
but I would find that older people, I thought they were cute
Yeah.
and they would just say sometimes the funniest things. There was so much wisdom. And if you just took the time to listen, right, just took the time to listen to some of their stories, their life experiences, where they grew up, how they got to be who they were, what part of the country they came from, and there's just so much to learn. And we're all, no matter what age you are, we're the same person inside. The outside changes, but we're still the same person. And I would like them to know that I saw them as a person, whoever they were, that whoever you were, 25, 65, 85, you're still you inside. And so I think I connected with that side of people.
I tell you what, I have to reflect on myself. I feel like a kid in a man's body. I don't think we ever really grow up, especially.
Right?
Do you think it's important to stay vital that in that regard?
100%. I'm all about, as I coach women particularly, just don't give up on who you are
Mm.
and buy into society's ideas that we're getting old, I can't do this. I've been told I'm a full grown child and I take
I love it. I love it.
and I love that, especially growing up in what felt like a very restrictive home.
Mm.
Now I get to be a big kid and have fun and do what I want to do and be silly and be okay with it.
And you're the boss. Now, tell me, we're going to shift gears and talk about the book and the
Mhm.
core parts of it. And part of that was the plight of nurses. Tell me a little bit about what that plight actually is, and I guess historically and present day.
Yeah, back when I was a nurse, and to some extent still now, it was compared to the US, it was definitely more formal.
Mm.
It almost felt a little military in ways, and the formalities, the statuses, the ranks, the uniforms, who could address whom and when. It was quite funny in some ways, but quite strict. We worked really, really hard, learned a lot, but there were some rich experiences from that time that I'll never forget. And it's interesting because US patients have often asked me if I trained in the UK, and they'd say things like, oh, those are the best trained nurses. And they seem to appreciate that I was British trained. I don't know if that's
Ah.
just a fairy tale or the Britishness that they thought was whatever they thought it was, but I seem to get a little elevation from the patients when they realize I was British trained.
Very good. Now, tell me, is the educational system different from one country to the other?
It's a little bit. And at that time, I think we got a lot more practical experience than the nurses did here. They got a lot more theory.
Mm.
And but either way, in both places right now, it's an intense course. Naturally, there's much to learn. I wouldn't want to do it again, put it that way. But it's a very rich experience, and it's a job you can do pretty much anywhere in the world. And there's so many options that come as a result of that education. So I'm glad I picked it and I'm glad of the opportunities it has lent my way as a result.
Along the way, but it would also make you feel really quite wonderful when you know your patients and other staff members showed gratitude for the work you're doing. Would that be fair? And how did that make you feel inside?
It does. It's a hard job, right?
Mm,
You
mm,
really have to have passion for that. You really have to have a love for that. It's one of those jobs that you go in with heart and you give and give of yourself in so many ways, in ways you never thought possible, to be honest.
mm.
And it's a very rich experience. You meet people from all walks of life. And just to know that you can have a huge impact on somebody's life and healing and just speaking to someone and connect to someone on a very such a personal level and looking into people's eyes, maybe holding their hand, giving them
Hmm.
support and reassurance. um, it's pretty incredible that I could be a part of that.
Well, thank you very much for your feedback. Absolutely loving the call. Now, in terms of the book, how long did it take for you to write it?
It didn't take too long because those stories were running around in my head, running around, and I thought, finally, I must put these thoughts to paper so I can release them from my brain. But there were stories that wouldn't leave me, and I thought, I just need to write these down. And so I started putting pen to paper. And then once it started, it just came pouring out because I remember some of those things so vividly. And then as I got writing, more things would come to my mind and more things could come to my mind. And I thought, if nothing else, to share with my children and family members and whomever, fellow nurses for sure. So it wasn't too hard to write it because the stories were fairly present in my brain, and just wanted to share that with the world. Whatever becomes of it, I took great pride in that part of my life, and I think it's one of those things. If you keep saying, I must, one of
Yes,
these
yes.
days, then make it today and do the thing already.
I love that attitude towards life. You've got now, and that's all we've got, really, isn't it? In terms of getting things done. Now, when you were writing the book, how did you go about compiling it? And was there power in the
Hmm.
pen, or are you a typer?
Powering the pen. I'm a handwriting person,
Hmm.
and I can, if I could get my hands to go as fast as my brain, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, ditto.
Yeah. So it came a flowing because it was right there and it was with passion and excitement. And
Yes.
those were rich times. There were rich times, good times. And yeah, from the very get-go, from going for the interview and the woman saying that we want you here, and going home so exciting, bursting with energy to tell my mom, I got in, I got in. It was such a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So inside the book, it's I guess a culmination of a number of shorter stories. Is that the way the
Correct.
book's constructed?
It's a lot of short stories, little vignettes of things that I remember,
Hmm.
and a bit of a comparison between then and the UK and when I got here. So not so much now because so much has changed, but also when I arrived here and how things were so different. I still work very hard. That bit wasn't different. I still work like crazy, but just the approach, that the mindset, that things were a little bit more relaxed here. And so the comparison was kind of cool. And it was a grand time. I missed home, but I was glad for the opportunity. And it was something I'd wanted to do actually since when I was 15 years old, I made a
Wow.
decision. I was in high school yet when I said, I'm going to become a nurse and then I'm moving to America. I don't know how, don't know when, but that's my life's goal.
That's what's going to happen. Now, in terms of I guess the technical structure of a book,
Hmm.
and when you contrast that with the beauty and the art, I guess you'd call it, of storytelling, how
Hmm.
much better do you think you've become as a writer in terms of when you focus on it as a story?
Hmm. Right. And so that's definitely still, I'm definitely focused on the story writing aspect because, read it back to yourself and see what does it sound like, because you got to also make sure that people fully, I'm a very visual person. So
Yep.
make sure when you're saying the words and the way that you put them together, that somebody gets a word picture pop up
Yep.
and can picture that thing, make it really clear because they're not there. You cannot assume they know what you mean. So make it very vividly clear so they pause for a minute and think, I could
I
see
get it.
that.
Yeah. When did you actually know that the book was finished?
That's a good question.
Because I find it hard to know.
That's a great question. Actually, the other day I was like, wait, I remember something else. Oh, I didn't put that in.
It's going to be War and
Oh,
Peace if I keep adding to
right? And
it.
so I think I just let it rest a little bit, put the pen down, and over time. So I didn't rush it. It's not like I must write it this week.
Hmm.
As things came to my mind, I would write it down. And then I contacted somebody who's going to help me formulate it and put it together and look into publishing, etc. But that's a good question. I think when I had the feeling that, like, okay, you're done now. This is good. This is good.
You a morning writer or just when you can type a writer?
Just when I can, I go with the flow. So
Yeah.
if I have a moment and I'm feeling it now, this is the time, go for it, do that thing, write it. I don't force it. If I'm sitting out with a pen and nothing's coming, then now is not the time.
So as we transition away from the book, do you plan to write another book? Is there something in the wings?
I plan to write more books, not necessarily nursing based, but
Mm.
more along the lines of what I do currently in terms of coaching and nutrition and health and all those kind of things. I've got some ideas there. Some of it goes back to childhood because that's where my story with health and what have you began. That kind of triggered things. So I'm going to talk about some of those internal things that us, particularly as women, are not always happy to talk about, but I want to just bring it out to make it okay to talk about those things.
Fantastic. Absolutely. That's a great transition into the next part of our discussion together today, Lee. Now, tell us a little bit about how you got involved with coaching and I guess a little bit about it.
It's interesting with the coaching and personal training. I think I was one of the last people to know that that's what I was supposed to do.
Mm.
I think others around me already knew that. I realized that it came to a head one time. I was in a boot camp class. I was on the floor. We were doing a last minute stretch before we ended the class. They needed a sub, and I was next to the person who was leading the class. And if anybody, we need somebody to replace such and such a time.
Mm.
And everybody in the big circle looked at me. I'm like, what are you all looking at me for? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? But one thing led to another. I started working with a company that was training and nutrition coaching. I was also involved for many years with a boot camp where I was the client. I was taking the classes, but it became very
Ah.
apparent over time that this might be my area that I could really grow and excel in. So it just became a natural thing. And it's a place that I just felt like empowered, and it got to be exciting. And then I wanted to do more. What else can I do? And how faster can I go? How much stronger can I get? And
Mm.
then I started to realize that women, especially in their 40s and plus, 40s, 50s, and that's who I work with,
Right.
are also at a time in their life where they don't feel that power and passion and don't necessarily feel that they can get beyond where they are. And so one thing led to another. And I think that's where it was for me, is just realizing that I want other people to feel good. And it's very hard to just keep that to yourself. Why wouldn't you want to share that?
Absolutely. Now, you talked about earlier being in different time zones. And so
Mm.
you work, what's the modus operandi? Can it be face to face as well as online? Is that how it works?
Totally. So I do both. I trained a lady in person at her home this morning. So I do have clients. I go to their home. Most
Mm-hmm.
people have either a gym or space outside. And mostly the weather is such that we can be outside. I have trained people in a park before if their home wasn't suitable.
Mm-hmm.
I have equipment. And so we make it work wherever we are. That's the whole point, is you don't need a whole bunch of stuff. It doesn't need to be complicated. You just need to move.
Yes, fantastic feedback. How does that actually make you feel when when you're observing, you're watching the actual transformation of people that you're working with?
You know what? Super exciting. It warms my heart. And it's kind of like being back in the hospital or nursing. There's different ways to care for people. I'm
Yep.
still caring, but in a different way. And I love to see the growth. I love to see them get stronger. It warms my heart when they're feeling more confident and they're making leaps and bounds. And it's literally, it's exciting. It is so, I get really excited to get there and to get them through a session and have them feel better. I just love it.
We talked about the sum total of a person's experience being right in front of you at that moment in time.
Mm,
When you meet a new client, they might have a number of different fears and beliefs
mhm.
about themselves. What would you say to them? What's I guess what's the thing that you want to know first up about them when you first meet them?
Yeah, good question. I want to know what they want for them. It doesn't have to be my ideal. How do
Mm.
you see yourself? What do you want to, you want to go from here, wherever you see yourself, and whatever limitations you feel you have, and where would you like to go? likely will go beyond there, but sometimes fear holds a person back and they say, I just want to be able to do this. I just want to be able to lose this amount of weight. I know they want to lose more, but it's a safety net. You go from one lily pad to the next.
Yep.
Let's make the first leap and just get her comfortable and give her the confidence in herself that she can make change and she can grow and get the things that she wants. And I get her, and I know that the limitations she may have in her mind. So it's really about, what do you want is what I want to know from her. Where do you see yourself? And then depending on how the conversation might go, I might ask her if there were no limitations whatsoever based on, and obviously I can't make you taller, there's things we can't do, but within the realm of possibilities,
Yep.
if there were no limitations, where would you really, really want to go? And what would you really, really want to do?
It makes me think about social media and the impact it has on body image when I guess
Hmm.
younger women look at themselves and there's this ideal. I think there's a positive space for social media, but talk to us a little bit about the downsides of it.
Right, because we're only seeing also the end of somebody's journey maybe, or when they've
Hmm.
reached a certain pinnacle. We don't know how long they've been doing this, how much work they've put into this, how many years they've put into this. And that's why I encourage women. I say, think about where you want to be 6 weeks, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, because it really is. I know it's an overused word, but it really is a journey. It's not a sprint.
Yep.
And so when you're looking at these folks, there's a lot of things we don't know. We don't know necessarily about their background, how much of this, what part genetics might play in this, and all of those things. People might get put off when they see my pictures. I'm like, but I've been doing this a long
Long
time.
time. Yep.
I have been working on my body for a long time, and I continue to do so. So I feel like I represent women, and I make a point of mostly only showing them movement patterns or exercises, as it were, not using any equipment. Something
Ah,
you can do in your house, because I don't want you to have those things to hold you back. You don't want to go to the gym, doesn't matter. You
doesn't matter.
don't have any equipment, it doesn't matter. Let's just use your body in short spaces of time. You've got 5 minutes. Okay, this is what you can do in 5 minutes. Let's make it realistic and doable. That's really what I'm about.
Do you find that the people that you, I guess, hang around have a major impact on the way your clients see themselves? And what happens if they're in that position where they're around somebody who says a little bit negative about it?
Right. And sometimes I point out to people, it probably says more about them than it says about you.
Hmm.
And, like people say, they'll say something to you, but really it's a question to themselves. Like, you want to go there? You're traveling to where? You're
Hmm.
wearing that?
Yep.
It's really them asking themselves. They need reassurance. It's really not that much about you. And so, people will do what they want to do, and so should you. And so hold your own and do the things you want to do. And that's really where I encourage women to come from. Do what you need to do. Like you said, we have now. Let's not live a life of regret. Do the thing you want to do and just go for it. Just do it.
It's great feedback. Now, how important is maintaining focus during your weight loss journey? Should people have a plan, and how do you keep focus? Is it constant contact with you? How do you do it?
Constant contact, they have accountability, they have that hand holding.
Hmm.
Look at it like a road trip across America, perhaps. You're driving from one end of the country to the other. There's certain spots along the way that you'd like to see. It's not just we're going to go from LA to New York. We're probably going to stop off at the Grand Canyons. You're going to stop off at some other landmark all throughout the country. So have some kind of like lily pads to jump to. It is a journey, and some places you'll stay a little while. Maybe you stay in whatever state it is for a little while. Stay in
Yep.
Chicago, stay in Ohio, and stay there a minute and just have a view of the land. It's okay. It's not a race.
Not a
You're
race.
on your way. You're making efforts. You're moving forward at your pace. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. They have different bodies, different makeup. Let's just do what we're doing and just take one foot at a time. Kind of like how I do hikes if it's uphill and I don't really love hikes. I don't keep worrying about the end point. I just keep putting one foot in front of the other. I just keep moving. And
You,
every now and then I might stop and look back and say, wow, look at that view. That's
yep.
incredible. We came that far.
Look how far we've come now. I would expect that you'd have some really strong relationships in your line of work now. Tell us a little bit about how important they are.
The beauty of working with women is it's never just about one thing. You will get involved in their lives and they'll get involved in yours. You'll know about their spouses or their children or their cat or their home or their remodel or whatever it is, a new car. And it's a place where it's important. Women relate in a way that I know they do. And it's important that they have that connection with you because you're talking about their body and their body image. It's very personal. So
Yep.
they need to feel safe and that they can trust you and there's no judgment. And we're on this together and we're making progress and we're going to get there however we get there. And they will tell you all kinds of things. Women just do. I think we're just wired that way. And we
Yep.
need to have that shareability, that connectivity. And it's a beautiful thing. I really love it.
Absolutely. Your focus seems to be around, Lee, on physical movement of the body. Tell us about the
Yes.
importance of nutrition and diet. Do you delve into that area as well?
Totally. So I'm very much a nutrition coach also, as well as the personal training. So there's a saying that you can't outrun your mouth. It took me a long time to figure out what that meant. But it's more about what you eat than it is the movement. So you can do all kinds of crazy exercises, but if your diet's off, you'll
Makes
get
no
some
difference.
success.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to clean up the eating act, basically. Look at that. Eat whole foods. I look at the whole person as holistically and just keep it simple. No special diet, but we are going to need to make some tweaks here and there based on what that individual wants to do. But I have them being more of an educated consumer.
Yep.
Let's look at what we're eating because sometimes we just don't know. And there's so many messages out there. Sometimes it's hard to decipher what's real, what's true, and what's not.
So I was thinking about this earlier. I'm wondering, what one important thing do you think your daughters have learned from you about diet,
Mm.
exercise, and nutrition?
Yes. So they grew up watching me exercise and train. They went to the gym with me before they were of school age. So that to them is just normal. That's what
Normal.
they do.
Yep.
You've rubbed off on them when one day you go into the playroom and you see them. They've pushed the coffee table out the way. They've put an exercise tape in, and they've
Away
come
they
up with their
go.
own little bizarro exercise attire, and they're doing exercises with Elmo or whoever they'd
I
found on
love
TV. I'm like, okay.
it. Oh, that's great feedback. Now, I'm wondering, when you do meet somebody, you do obviously have an onboarding process. You would do somewhat of I guess, a current check or an audit
Correct.
on where they're at.
Correct.
What is that process, and what does it look like?
Yeah, so I want to make sure they're a good fit to work with me. They do need to be committed to making the steps and doing the action. And yes, there is some element of coachability and support and handholding, but you still have to show up, right? You got to
Yeah.
be there and be coachable essentially. You want the help, you want the change. I love getting into the mindset part of the whole coaching because that's mostly where the challenge lies.
Hmm.
And so getting into her head and knowing that I understand the struggle because I've struggled myself.
Yeah.
Let's work past those so we can make the better choices so we can feel better. So we do an audit call essentially where she'll tell me what she needs, what she's looking for. I tell her what to offer and we decide if we're a good fit.
Fantastic feedback. Now, in all of this, where are people likely to find you? Where's the best place to go?
So I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group as well as a nutrition page, and then also on Instagram. I meet a lot of people on Instagram at Coaching by Lee, and that is also a great place, especially as I do lives, and then that will pick up new people that come through and pick up on that. So that's also a great platform as well as LinkedIn as well.
Absolutely great feedback. Now, also, if they want to visit your primary website, what's that website again?
So that's becoachedbylee.com.
Well, that's beautiful feedback. This has been such a wonderful call. If you're on the call today and you're listening in, you're thinking, hey, this sounds like something that could benefit me, certainly reach out to Lee. No matter where you see this interview or hear this interview for that matter, you'll find the links back to Lee and Instagram and Facebook and her primary website, which is becoachedbylee.com. Just click the link, catch up with Lee and go from there. So with all that being said, Lee, thank you so very much for joining me on the My Future Business Show today.
Absolutely. I thank you for your time, Rick. Appreciate you today. Great questions, and it was so wonderful to connect with you.